Hello, everyone. My name is Mansoor Soomro, and thank you for joining this session on leading in the age of open innovation. More than ever, we see the need of innovation. Organizations are investing a lot in terms of designing and developing new products and services, and innovation is the cornerstone for that. But have you ever imagined how do these companies come up with these innovative, amazing products and services, and that too at a pace, at a neck-breaking pace? Do you know what happens inside the organization? Let me give you a simple walkthrough to that. Imagine there's a guy who comes up with an idea, maybe idea of a gadget that can change lives. Now this guy, he comes up with this idea and then does research around it. And then after doing that, he makes a proposal with his team and presents it within the organization to the board of the company. The company board, the committee, decides whether this project is feasible or not, whether it's viable or not, the financials make sense or not, return on investment and other things. If it passes that stage, the product goes into the manufacturing cycle. This is called closed innovation, which is quite traditional and quite orthodox. In today's session, what I'm talking about is the opposite of closed innovation, which is open innovation. Before I come to the definition that you see on the screen, let me take back the same example that I quoted on the previous slide, which is that a guy who comes up with an idea inside the organization and then he teams up with other people inside the organization. So now in open innovation, what happens is that this guy comes up with an idea, and after that, he researches for a similar idea outside the organization and finds organization, mostly small and technology-oriented organizations that are already working on those ideas. And then this guy teams up with those organizations outside, and after teaming up with that, comes up with a new product or service, which then is a collaborative innovation. So it's quite open in that case because the innovation was not only discovered by the inside the corridors of the company itself, but this guy went outside and partnered with other companies outside the organization, hence the word open. So if we talk about the definition, as Henry coined this term back in 2003, so he mentioned that open innovation is a collaborative approach, more of an interactive approach. Through large organizations, invest in small companies, mostly startups, and that too mostly technology startups, who have a phenomenal idea. So they try to capture large organizations, they try to capture ideas in partnership with small companies, and then they co-design the new products and services, which brings us to the point of open innovation. Now, the quote by Pauling makes perfect sense here. He says that the way to get good ideas is to get lots of ideas and throw the bad ones away. It's like a funnel, right? So you put in more ideas, and the more ideas you have, the better will be the output towards the end. And that's exactly what open innovation stands for, which is to open up more ideas from a diverse set of people in the society. Which brings me to the next point. What's very important and to a large extent interesting is when we talk about open innovation, we usually talk about employees in the organization teaming up with other companies outside the organization to come up with new products and services. But the extent of openness could be understood from the fact that we are not talking about external organizations only, but to a great extent, we can partner with other stakeholders outside the organization. So in terms of open innovation, organizations now are partnering with governments, universities, embassies, different institutions outside the organization, even customers and suppliers in coming up with their own products and services, right? Which shows the extent of openness under the domain of open innovation. There's a very interesting example of telephony companies. This dates back to the time when hand phones and cell phones came into this world. So at that time, the feature of SMS, short message service, was considered to be one of the add-on functions which wasn't conceived to have a great value at that time, at the time of inception. So SMS, so primarily the phones were introduced for the voice call, right? And then SMS was just an additional option that the inventors thought that that might be interesting. But after launching these cell phones, and particularly at a time when these cell phones reached the hands of teenagers, we realized that this SMS feature has a great potential, and it changed the domain of telecom industry overall, right? So later on, the users of the handsets through the SMSs, they changed the working methodology and the innovation of the new phones that were coming in. So in terms of emoticons, how to write live messages, how to have other options in that, but it was primarily coming from the user side, not from the producer side, which is quite interesting that in terms of open innovation, normally when we talk about patents, intellectual property rights, we say that an inventor knows what the invention can do, what is the potential of the invention. But in terms of the future technologies and future open innovation examples, invention in terms of inventions, the inventor will not be able to foresee to a great extent in terms of what is the real potential of the technology. It's the users instead who will decide what is the potential of the technology, right? So it's not primarily the one who invented it, but it's actually the users. So users are in the driving seat now. So the future is quite exciting in terms of open innovation, because users will then be developing the new products and services, and in that case users become the producers, or in other words, consumers become the designers of products and services, which makes the whole domain of open innovation quite exciting. There are some other examples, like in terms of Linux as an operating system. It's an open share operating system, which is one of the basic fundamental examples of open innovation. Wikipedia, again, an easy to understand example. It's a collaborative platform, and users primarily drive the platform, and the originators just created a platform, and then primarily it's users as designers and as producers of the content. So recently, we also saw the examples of Virgin Galactic and Amazon Blue. So usually it was considered to be like, in the United States, NASA was considered as the only option for space travels. But then with these commercial enterprises coming in, private organizations coming in, we see the example of open innovation, where they partnered with people outside the organization, firms outside the organization, stakeholders outside the organization, to come up with new products and services, right? So now, as we have some idea about what open innovation is and some examples of open innovation, you might be thinking of the question that what's in it for the companies? So what's in it for the large companies who invest and who find small companies and partner with them? And then, quite interestingly, what's in it for the small companies, right? So it's a win-win situation for both types of companies. So to start with, in terms of small companies, they thrive on agility, speed. They are small. Their processes turnaround is fast, right? So they don't wait long for too many signatures on a document. They're small. Their working methodology is faster, which is very important for open innovation, and that's why small companies do better in terms of large as compared to large companies. Large companies, on the other side, they have muscles for innovation in terms of resources, right? So they have funds, they have standards, they have a room to play around in terms of labs and facilities, right? So that's the edge that large companies have. Now, when we talk about agility for small companies and resources for large companies, one more important comparison would be the failure and success ratio. For large companies, when they remember the first example, guy goes and pitches his idea to the managing board. In that case, they look at the financial viability. They look at the return on investment of a project before they introduce that product or service. So in that case, we look at the success ratio, right? Large companies have a habit of thriving on success ratio and create a trend and trajectory through that. On the contrary, small companies, they don't shy from failures. They want to fail fast and they want to do it more often. The point is they want to get to the point faster, no matter how many failures they come up with, right? So normally in usual case of entrepreneurship, as an example, where the risk is high, but the reward is again high. So that success and failure ratio is again very important, and it's a key ingredient for small companies in towards open innovation. So when small companies they fail faster, so large companies can extend arms through small companies to test the products and services faster before they could launch it under their banner, because certainly the reputation is also at stake. With larger the company, the larger is the reputation, right? So equally, it's a win-win for both small and large companies in terms of open innovation. Moving forward, we did research at Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. My senior colleague, Professor Muhammad Hizam Hanafiya, and myself, we wrote a paper and published this a few months back, which talks about the technology companies landscape in Malaysia and how open innovation is affecting in this domain. So there's a QR code. You can download the paper for further reading. I would just like to share some quick bits from the research that we did. So we studied 238 technology companies in Malaysia. Why technology companies? Because we believe they are more agile. They are faster in terms of technology adoption and implementation. So it becomes a good case study to start with. We used purposive sampling as it makes more sense considering technology companies. The selection criteria for respondents was that the managers have decision-making ability and they have at least 1 year working experience in the company in order to make a choice towards the feedback that we asked from the respondents. Now, what are the findings? So there are three interesting findings. Okay, the first finding is in terms of the company size. So we found out through our research that large size technology companies fare better, rank better, are in a better position to work on open innovation as compared to medium sized technology companies, which which brings us to the point that the larger the size of the company, the more potential they have towards the more potential and the more tendency they have towards open innovation. The second finding, which contradicts with a few of the literature studies in the recent past, is that both manufacturing and service technology firms are interested in open innovation practices. Predominantly, we have thought that manufacturing companies coming up with the products, tangible products, they thrive on open innovation. But our study of technology companies, both from the service side and from the manufacturing side, leads us to the point that both manufacturing and service firms, they do well in terms of open innovation. After moving from the company size and the company type, the third finding that we came up with was that large size companies are interested in both technology exploitation and technology exploration. These are the two terms that those who want to further understand the concept of open innovation. So there are two further types of open innovation. One is inside out innovation, which is a company, someone inside the company develops an idea, a product or service and takes it outside to test it, and then launches it in collaboration under open innovation. The other way is outside in, where a company sees an idea which is external, which was found in the market, and they captured it from there, and then they made an in-house product in collaboration on that. So both these methods, concave and convex, both these methods are equally in practice, and our finding made us realize that the technology companies are interested in both technology exploitation and technology exploration. which is quite encouraging in terms of the landscape of open innovation and potential we can realize on open innovation. Moving towards the final segment of this session, now we know what open innovation is. We know through research the major findings on open innovation. We have some examples in mind of open innovation. The point is, in terms of leadership, where do we stand? How can we promote this culture of open innovation? What is it that leaders can do in organizations? And here, I would like to share with you 6 interesting ideas and perspectives that can be taken as takeaways for companies in working towards open innovation. The first one: not all smart people should work in our company. Now that's quite interesting. So previously we thought that companies should hire find and then hire and retain smart people, but the idea of open innovation says that you don't need to hire all of them, right? Or most of them even, right? The point is to work with them, right? So maybe they are externals. You work with them as externals. So you go outside the company and collaborate with them, and you find smart people, and work on them, work with them. So the idea is that not to hire them as always, but to collaborate with them. That's more important in terms of leadership. Number 2, in terms of open innovation, we're talking about leaders who have high social intelligence. Why is this needed? Why is this important? Because open innovation thrives on connections, networks, right? Reach to market, reaching to the innovators in the industry and sometimes outside the industry. And for that, high social intelligence is a very valuable leadership skill that needs to be worked on in terms of organizations and the pipeline of leaders. Third point, which is also very interesting, is that in terms of leadership, we need people who are good at sense making. They can read the situation and they can make meaning in that particular situation, meaning out of that situation. And this is a rare skill because normally, like in a time like this, which is like pandemic, COVID-19 moving on, there's a lot of uncertainty and volatility in the market. There are figures, there's big data, there's more than enough data, but then looking at those trends, how can you read that situation, and then how can you make meaning out of it? That's a skill, and we need leaders with these skills as they would do better in terms of open innovation. Moving towards the last 3 tips that I'd like to share, perspectives I'd like to share on open innovation and leadership. The fourth one is that it's beneficial to look outside for the organizations. In fact, as we started this presentation, we talked about going outside and working with other organizations in coming up with the new products and services. So it's beneficial, and in fact, it's not beneficial. It's important as well, because the idea is that a lot of companies, particularly large-sized companies, which our findings reflect in our research, they are very complacent. They are very content with the kind of innovations they have had. The reason being that they have worked on those portfolio of products since ages, and that's tried and tested, and it works, right? But the point is that for new products, for new problems, we need new solutions, and we have to find a better match in terms of the innovative products and services, and we have to find them before the competition finds it. And for that, looking outside the organization is critical, right? And sometimes we also say that if you find a solution for a particular problem in a particular industry, the better way would be to look outside the industry, go out of the system, and then find a solution, which might be quite unorthodox, but it's the need of the day, right? So in terms of leadership, we need leaders who promote this. And then fifth perspective here is that leaders have a responsibility of creating an open culture. So we're talking about a time in terms of open culture when you have to celebrate discoveries outside the organization. You have to celebrate victories with external partners, which requires an open culture, which requires a reset on talent management processes and KPIs, right? So the rewards have to be, the methodology of rewards has again to be revisited. The values, shared values, have to be promoted more rather than the in organizational individual values, right? So it calls for a new culture, which is very important in terms of leadership. And last but not the least, the philosophy behind open innovation is also very important in terms of creating open innovation pro leaders. And the philosophy is to take a shift from knowledge hiding to knowledge sharing, right? So as open innovation is all about collaboration, is all about interactivity, is all about moving outside the organization and then working in collaboration. So the premise of knowledge sharing becomes very, very important, right? And in the end, I would like to end this presentation with the with Professor Henry mentioned on open innovation, as he coined the word of open innovation in 2003. So he said a statement recently. He said that it's a world of abundance, not scarcity. And open innovation exactly talks about this. So open innovation says that innovation is not restricted to countries or regions. It's not confined to companies or brands. The world is diverse and it is open, and it calls for open innovation. With that, thank you so much for your attention, uh, and best of luck in terms of creating leaders who will promote the culture of open innovation. Thank you.